Bill Cosby was released from prison today. Our favorite, Dr. Huxtable, was convicted of sexual assault against a woman stemming back from 2004 incident where he basically had digital intercourse with her and fondled her breasts. It was a friend of his, and she met with him several times afterwards. They remained friends, and then she called the police like a year later, filed a police report. Basically, the reason it was overturned was because the DA at the time, back in 2005, who was kind of considering filing charges, decided that there wasn't enough evidence. And the victim there had various inconsistent statements. She took a year to call the police and report this. And get this, before she called the police to report it, she met with civil attorneys in order to file a lawsuit for financial gain. She ultimately ended up getting 3.38 million buckaroos for her allegations against Cosby. But what happened was the DA said, you know what, there's not enough evidence to charge Mr. Cosby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out and state that in no uncertain terms that there's not enough evidence to charge him, that we're not going to go forward with this prosecution, that we will not now and we will not in the future. And then what that does is it releases the privilege against self-incrimination. It releases Cosby of that privilege. In other words, the Fifth Amendment says that no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. So when she sued him for money, he could, and this criminal case was pending, Bill Cosby could say, like in a deposition when he was answering questions in that lawsuit, I exercised my Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. I'm not going to answer that question. And he had that right because a criminal case was pending. Now, when the DA says there's no more criminal case, you have to answer these questions, we're going to get you some money, victim. Now, Bill Cosby in his depositions, he has to answer these questions because he no longer has a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because there's no criminal case pending because the DA said we're not going to file charges. So, long story short, he basically answers the questions of the depositions. They settle the case for $3.38 million. And then 10 years later, they prosecute the case against him. There's a new district attorney. It's the assistant of that district attorney that said, we're not going to prosecute. They move forward with the prosecution, and they use the deposition testimony that he was required to give previously because he did not have a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because there was no criminal case pending. They used that testimony in the criminal case in order to obtain the conviction. Now, I always thought that the case against Bill Cosby was pretty hokey to begin with, this particular case. Don't get me wrong. The man's a scumbag. But a lot of these women he's hanging out with, they're scumbags themselves. They're looking to gain an advantage. They're hanging out with the famous Bill Cosby. They're in these gray area situations. They're trying to make money off of him, profit off of him in their careers and or in a lawsuit. And in that case, the very bothersome thing was it wasn't just about what this woman had to say against him. They marched in women that had made accusations against him from as far back as the 70s, 5 or 6 women that had nothing to do with her allegations, just their own allegations about misconduct that Bill Cosby had committed, in order to basically bolster their case and sustain this conviction against Cosby. So I'm glad that this case was overturned. The Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination is sacrosanct. It's a very firmly held right that we have. And the fact that he was required to testify in a deposition because the DA said we're not going to prosecute, and then later on they took his answers from that deposition to sustain a criminal conviction, effectively eviscerated his Fifth Amendment rights. And I believe the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania rightly found that.